Hello everyone, and welcome to the Mitch Zone, here on WPCX 97.1, where we cover sports topics throughout the professional leagues and here on Presbyterian College's campus. Today is Friday, March 5th. My name is Mitchell Mercer, and today I'll be discussing J.J. Watt signing with the Arizona Cardinals, the Atlanta Hawks firing coach Lloyd Pierce, and the latest regarding the recent surgery of New York Yankees manager Aaron Boone. As for the Presbyterian College Blue Hose, I'll be discussing the Big South Conference Tournament for women's basketball, the men's soccer team, and the Big South Cross Country Championships for both cross country teams. Again, this is a little bit shorter episode today, but I do want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen to sport topics that I'm really passionate about. It means a whole lot to me personally, and I can't thank you enough for it. So without further ado, let's enter the Mitch Zone. The big story we're going to touch on is J.J. Watt, former Houston Texans star and NFL Defensive Player of the Year, signing with the Arizona Cardinals. Very big shocker to everyone across the sports world, especially to myself, since I assumed J.J. Watt would have gone back home to play for Green Bay, signed with the Super Bowl champion Buccaneers, or another franchise that's in contention for a Super Bowl. But anyway, Watt broke the news on Twitter by working out in a Cardinals uniform and is reported to have signed a 2-year deal with the franchise. He finished the 2020 season with 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and an interception, but the former Texan has dealt with numerous injuries over the past few seasons. However, he lands on a team of promising young talent, including Kyler Murray and former teammate DeAndre Hopkins. He also reunites with one of his former Texans defensive coaches, Vance Joseph, in a defense that has Jordan Hicks, Isaiah Simmons, Budda Baker, and Devon Kennard. Watt is also paired with Cardinals pass rusher Chandler Jones, who has led the NFL in sacks since the 2012 season with 97 total. Arizona is coming off an 8-8 year in which the team barely missed the postseason. I think when you look at this move as a whole, I really think J.J. Watt viewed the Cardinals roster and thought of himself that this organization is the best place to get playing time and be on a young, talented football roster. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line is this. The Cardinals were really close to making the playoffs last season. The problem was the defense couldn't stop anybody. And despite having a good offense and a good mind in Cliff Kingsbury as head coach, you're going to need a good defense that can stop anybody when it comes to playing football in January. And no matter how good the offense is, if you can't stop anyone, you ain't winning. It's simple. If J.J. Watt can stay healthy, and if you can coach him to the best visibility along what you have in Chandler Jones, I do think the Cardinals can have a great chance of making the playoffs next year and possibly being a sleeper contender for the Super Bowl. And when you have 2 guys that can get after the quarterback, especially in the division where you have Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford, and at the moment Jimmy Garoppolo, and all 3 of them, the Seahawks, the Rams, the 49ers, have all made the Super Bowl at least once in the past 8 years. And getting a unique and strong pass rush can be the key difference in either making the postseason or not making the postseason. And look, I do think Arizona is going to draft really heavy on defense next month because you do have a lot of free agents and holes on the defensive side of the football. But as of right now, I do think that J.J. Watt is the type of figure that the Arizona Cardinals need, not only as a locker room leader, but as someone who can be a difference maker if the Cardinals want to play football in January and possibly beyond. All right, moving on to some NBA news. We have our second coach fired during the season. The Atlanta Hawks have fired coach Lloyd Pierce after a 14-20 start to the regular season. The Hawks were supposed to be one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference this season, but has been hampered by injuries throughout the roster. The Hawks are currently 3rd in the Southeast Division and 11th in the Eastern Conference. They are 2 games behind the Chicago Bulls for the NBA play-in tournament, which will determine which 2 conferences will produce the number 8 seed for the playoffs. Unlike Minnesota, Atlanta will have an interim coach in Nate McMillan, the former head coach of the Indiana Pacers, for the remainder of the season. So here's the deal. Should Atlanta have played better this season with an all-star in Trae Young, along with other key players such as Clint Capella, John Collins, Chris Dunn, Bogdan Bogdanovic, Cam Reddish, and the veteran Rajon Rondo? Yes, absolutely. But would I have fired Lloyd Pierce after 3 seasons? I'm going to be honest, most likely not. And the reason for this is because, you still had a chance with the second half of the schedule to make a run towards the play-in tournament. And if you win those 2 games, then you're in the playoffs. And look, Nate McMillan is a very good basketball coach. I thought he did a good job at Indiana. And personally, I think it was a mistake that the Pacers let him go. But I think the reality of the situation is this. Not just for the NBA, but for all sports. If you have a key young superstar like Trae Young, for example, and solid additional pieces around him, and you don't win, the bottom line is people are going to be impatient, and they're going to want changes ASAP. And personally, I still don't like when sports organizations and franchises do this kind of move these days. And my heart goes out for Lloyd Pierce because injuries are unpredictable. And I usually believe that coaches in any sport, in my personal opinion, when they come into a new organization, they should at least get 4 to 5 years. And I do think he should have gotten another year, in my opinion, because heading into the season, the Hawks had a really talented roster, and they were supposed to be a playoff contender, and unfortunately, the bad luck just got into his roster. However, it's really not the case these days because if you come into an organization and you have key young talent, the expectation is you're going to need to win immediately, regardless if you have any disadvantage with facilities or you get caught with the injury luck. And look, I do understand that aspect of it because you don't want to waste anyone's prime talent. However, I think you're starting to see this type of situation in rebuilding franchises, and honestly, I don't like this move by the Hawks at all. And another thing I want to point out is that if franchises want to have a consistent winner, they need to be patient. I mean, look, they didn't build the Roman Coliseum overnight. They took their time, and guess what? It became one of the most famous historical artifacts in history. And I think if Lloyd Pierce was another coach who unfortunately happened to be with an organization that didn't have the patience to rebuild and instead wanted to win ASAP, and trust me, I don't care what you say, no sports organization cannot win if you don't have patience. It's just the bottom line. All right, moving ahead now. Aaron Boone of the New York Yankees had surgery for a new pacemaker. The manager of the club will take a leave of absence from the team and is currently recovering in Florida. And bench coach Carlos Mendoza is taking over as interim manager of the team. Boone is a former 12-year player in the majors and was an All-Star in 2003 with the Cincinnati Reds. Really not a whole lot to get into this. I think Boone should come back ready for the season, and I believe the Yankees should be one of the favorites to win the World Series this upcoming season. Obviously, I think this team should win the AL East, and you have really good players, such as Aaron Judge, Gary Sanchez, Giancarlo Stanton, Garrett Cole, Gleyber Torres, and many others. And I do think this team has some really good hitters that can help them score runs, especially in the postseason. You do have some good teams in the American League, such as Oakland, Minnesota, and of course Houston, who could challenge for the American League pennant. But I do believe the Yankees have the strongest roster in all of baseball. All right, guys, so that's going to conclude the first half of the program. Coming up next, we'll discuss the Big South Conference Tournament for women's basketball, the men's soccer team, and the Big South Cross Country Championships for both cross country teams here on the Mitch Zone on WPCX 97.1. First, here is the 2-minute music warning.